Albuquerque, New Mexico, a town known for its fighting spirit and being home to one of the most iconic martial arts gyms in the world.
Sometimes you just got to grind. Sometimes it's just about dealing with making yourself uncomfortable.
Make sure you guys are coming under. Don't push down, obviously, because he's just going to go into your thigh. Instead, guys, just pop that off the hip.
The end results will either take care of themselves or I will fail, one or the other. But the process itself, to me, is what I care about now. So that's just really just staying in love with that.
In this episode, we sit down with one of the pioneers of New Mexico MMA, Greg Jackson. Greg Jackson, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. Good to see you.
Good to see you, boss.
Been a fan for a long time, Greg. You've been in this sport, like we were just talking about, since I was a little kid. So I've sort of seen you grow with mixed martial arts, right? Your gym's got bigger, your staff's gotten bigger, and you work with a lot of the best fighters in the world. Where did Greg Jackson decide to do this for his life? When did you decide that my career is going to be making champions?
I don't know if I've ever decided that. I actually got talked into the whole thing, as I've said on some interviews before. Basically, my students talked me into the competition end of it. I just grew up doing martial arts so that I could, keep my self-respect and be able to defend myself. And then that kind of, when the UFC came out and we were doing something similar to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but of course not in their league. The Gracies were like PhDs and we were in kindergarten. But that kind of idea, when these UFC came out, a bunch of these bare knuckle competitions kind of came out with no rules, and you never knew what the rules were going to be. And so my students wanted to go do all that stuff, and so we started doing that, and then we started winning there and won some more, and here I am 30 years later with you.
You've coached some of the best fighters in the world throughout that time, Greg. George St Pierre came down here to train before. I actually really liked the social media video you guys put. George St Pierre, when he was fighting Thiago Alves, told you, "Hey, my groin is torn, coach." Do you remember what you said to him?
I pulled my groin.
I don't care. I don't care, George. Hey, look at me. This is where champions are made. You understand me?
Yeah.
Nothing matters now. Hit him with your groin.
Yeah, I'm an idiot, so I've immortalized as many of my idiotic decisions are. That I just wanted to get his mentality right. You know what I mean? Get him refocused on fighting and not worrying about his injury. So, yeah, it's one of my more famous silly things that I've said. There's plenty of others, believe me.
You said hit him with it, right?
Yeah,
hit him with
groin,
it.
Yep.
This is a mentality thing that it seems like carries through all of your cornering work. I've cornered fighters as well, and I've definitely learned from listening to you corner.
Something nice of you to say.
It's true. Something I've learned is a lot of other corners will come in and they'll be like, "Hey, you're going for that guillotine. You should be pummeling an underhook, right?" You come in. What do? You count. You tell them to breathe. Why don't you corner them for the first few seconds there?
Well, you just want to get their heart rate down and kind of get them and shift their focus into learning. It's not so much learning, maybe the wrong word, assimilating information, you know what I mean? And if you come screaming at them, they're just going to shut down, most of them. It depends on the fighter, but most of them I just want to try to calm them down, get their breathing. They should know what to do at that point. You make small adjustments or remind them of things here and there, but getting them calm, getting that heart rate. I love it under 140. If we can get it down under 140 in a minute, that would be great. And just getting their mentality kind of locked into, okay, what do we got to do? And then we have it very organized, who says what when, and so I'll say something, or Mr. Winklejohn will say something, or whoever in the other corner is. But everybody's kind of allocated a little bit of time, and we go through 1, 2, and 3, and then send them back out. But you have to, if you're doing an athletic event, you've got to kind of maximize your recovery. You can't just be like yelling information like that's going to save the fight, because very rarely it does sometimes, but most of the time just getting them calm, refocused, and making small adjustments.
I see that, and you're a very calm corner, a lot of contrast with you and other corners. You talked about mentality again, and I said that to you before we jumped on. It seems to me you're a great mental coach. Rashad Evans was telling Joe Rogan that you would have him carrying fighters like a wedding style up cliffs on the sides of mountains, running up sand dunes. He said like if he would have dropped Keith Jardine, they both would have died off of this mountain. What's the point of this? Isn't there a treadmill over there?
Yeah, right. That might be they might not have died. But certainly it was a little bit of dangerous, but that's what fighting is you need that little bit of danger. You need that little bit. You need to be able to exert yourself kind of into that red, stay in that red, and then maintain a very aggressive mentality, even though there's danger around. And I think that's one of the things that it's very, strength and conditioning is so important to do as a fighter, to have that kind of baseline scientifically. Sometimes you just got to grind. Sometimes it's just about dealing with making yourself uncomfortable, not uncomfortable just physically, but mentally as well, where you're feeling down, or you know, there's that sense of, wow, this guy might really hurt me in this round, and I still have to focus on the process and kind of make it through that nervousness and get back to thinking about victory. So a lot of that stuff is designed for me to say, okay, well, you know, you deal with danger, you stay calm, you still put yourself in the red, and you're able to function there, and you're able to be comfortable there. That makes you a very dangerous individual.
Something I have to ask you about today, because we're going to try to break down and talk to a lot of different coaches about this, specifically jabs in MMA. How useful is a jab? Let me segue real quick. In boxing, it's always called the most important punch. Is it the most important punch in MMA?
I don't think there's any one most important thing. Certainly it's an underutilized tool. But as soon as you assign emotional value to that, as soon as you say, that's the most important punch, then you're not fighting, you're jabbing. So it's a big difference. The most important thing is winning. So if that means that you lead with a leg kick all the time, if that's what the opponent needs, then yeah. But there's not one important punch, because there's not one style of fighter that you're fighting. If you were always fighting a boxer that jabbed back or whatever, yeah, maybe that would be the most important punch in that context, in that fight. But that's the real thing about fighting, is it's an open-ended, dynamical system. A lot of people also say, oh, well, that would never work in a street fight. I'm like, well, really? Like, what kind of street fight are you talking about? Are you talking about running through neighborhoods, getting jumped by kids? Are you talking about a one-on-one street fight in a schoolyard? Are you talking about a fight in a bar? Are you talking about a fight on the grass? There's so many different, in a car, getting jumped in a car. There's so many different street fight scenarios that also, like, the most important thing you ever do is completely fluid. The whole thing is about decision making. It's what decision you make. How high is your fight IQ? Can you keep your decision making accurate and effective under duress? Like, those are the things that fighting is about. But the technique and stuff, that's for people that might not understand fighting at a fundamental level, but understand it more as a, well, 75% of the jabs, blah, 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 which is great. Those are great tools to have, those numbers to have. But don't mistake what fighting is about. It's about decision making, making good decisions, and keeping your kind of calm and ability to adjust to a situation.
I don't think I've ever seen a better jab in MMA than George St Pierre's, right? Is that something that George was naturally good at? What is different about the way George was able to double jab Josh Koscheck's face off, where we don't see it so much, with a standard fight? The way he was able to use a jab in MMA, was that a unique thing? Are we going to see more of this? Fighters completely controlling fights with that one stick?
Yeah, but it depends on the fighter. Like, George is excellent at jabs. He understood the timing. He understood how to use the jab, to use the setups. If he would have just done the jab by itself without any follow-up takedowns, or like in the second Koscheck fight, Koscheck was expecting us to try to take him down a bunch because we had done that in the first fight. So, you know, kind of flipping that on its head and using the rhythm control and a lot more of that, the kind of, well, if he constantly thinks he's going to shoot, it's very easy to get a jab going. And that's one of the reasons that George's jab was so effective, is he's also so effective at his shooting takedowns really, really well. So if you put him on that kind of horns of a dilemma, where if I put my hands down and anticipate a shot, I'm going to get jabbed. If my hands go up to deal with this jab, then as soon as I step forward, you're going to take me down. That, again, it's context. It's not just in a vacuum that the jab works on its own. It's the totality of the situation allows that jab to work or not work, depending on the fighter. And George was excellent at, because of his good takedowns, because of the threat of those good takedowns, and because he's very talented and very fast at his jabs, he was able to really utilize that tool.
You were George's coach when he was in his prime. Today, the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in mixed martial arts is Kamaru Usman. What does a prime George St Pierre versus Kamaru Usman fight look like?
When you talk about predictive stuff, it's very hard to predict, because it's not one of those things where it's a one-to-one. What did their camp look like? Did one of them get injured? You know, et cetera, et cetera. George is my guy, so I'm always going to say George wins, you know what I mean? That's just me being biased. Not that I'm not a huge fan of Usman. I love the way he fights. He's so strong, and works with one of my dear friends, Trevor Whitman. So yeah, but of course I'm biased, so I'm always going to say my guy would win. But it's one of those things where, almost if you're just a normal fan, you can almost predict with the same accuracy as like a super coach or whatever, just because there's so many variables in the fight, right? There's so many. Camps aren't, again, it's not a one-to-one. Camps, how did the camp go? What happened in there? What are they dealing with? There's so many variables. It's really hard to predict.
It's January of 2022. What is Greg Jackson excited for in 2022 here? Who should we be looking out for out of Jackson Wink? What are your goals? What's Greg Jackson's New Year's resolution?
I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but my goal is just to stay in the process as much as possible, to still enjoy the process as much as possible. And we've got great fighters coming up, like Aaron Pico, obviously. You're going to have to keep both eyes on him. Davian, Christian, there's a lot of Bellator fighters. I just started working with Ryan Hall his last fight in the UFC, and so that's been a lot of fun. He's he's really a Picasso in that he redefines structures the way he does stuff, and so it's been a lot of fun to assist him in that journey. And so yeah, I just really want to stay in love with my art, with my craft, with helping people, and yeah, the end results will either take care of themselves or I will fail, one or the other. But the process itself, to me, is what I care about now. So that's just really just staying in love with that.
The first name you mentioned is Aaron Pico. I got to sit there cage side and watch Aaron Pico fight Justin Gonzalez in Bellator there. When I look at Aaron Pico, I see another level of athlete. You know, it's sort of like watching George St Pierre, sort of like watching some of these A-plus level world champions. Is Aaron Pico approaching his prime now?
Yeah, I'd say he's a few years out from really turning his corner. But yeah, he's building and building and building, and you can see every fight there's a dramatic improvement. He's able to do a little bit more against a little bit higher level of competition, step by step by step. And a lot of that is thanks to Ali Abdulaziz, his manager, and you know, I have a little input there as well, and Brandon Gibson and Mr. Winklejohn. As the whole team is kind of here to help him out with that process. But yeah, he's just super competitive, another level guy, and a heck of a good dude, like just a sweetheart of a guy, which at this point in my career I really enjoy working with.
Absolutely, and what an exciting fighter. I mean, you got to hold that guy back a little bit. It just seems like he's the Energizer Bunny in there. When he throws body shots, it seems like people's souls leave their body. I think their ancestors feel those punches.
Yeah, certainly their kids and their kids will be feeling that as body shots. But yeah, it's he's just a great athlete, and he's really gifted in that he hits hard with both hands, kicks hard. Amazing wrestling, obviously. His jiu-jitsu, I mean, he's finishing people left and right now, and if he doesn't, he's going to get you in trouble. So his ground and pound is looking great. Yeah, he's really starting to build onto his, I think, his legacy, which will be a multi-world champion.
You really added to ground and pound in mixed martial arts. Some of your fighters, the way they elbow people in the face on the ground is brutal, yes? We've seen further evolution with maybe the Nurmagomedovs, this idea of the Dagestani handcuff on the ground, and their ability to hold people down. What have you been able to learn from watching these guys, and how have you evolved your coaching for 2022 MMA?
What makes Khabib, what made him so dangerous is that he would take people down and they would get back up. He would take them down, he would get back, and then he would exhaust them on the edge. What he did extremely well, and what the Dagestani and Chechnyan fighters do, is their wrestling is so phenomenal that they really don't care if you get back up a little bit, because they're going to put you right back down, and that's almost worse. When you almost have like a light of hope, you're like, I'm almost up, and then they put you right back down again, and it's bam, a bam, a bam. So in some ways, it's easier when somebody's on the ground. As long as you're staying aggressive, you're looking for ways out. But if you're almost out, and then you go down and they crack you again, and then you get up and you're almost out, it's so dissuading. I really enjoy their style. I love watching them fight, and they're so tricky in what they do and so smart. So yeah, what I've learned is from them, which I learned from something from everybody, but it's just that relentless wrestling style and not putting emotional content in if the guy gets up. Doesn't matter to him. If you get up 15 times on Khabib when he was fighting, he'd take you down 16 and finish you. Like that mentality of not like, oh, he got up, and everybody kind of gets up and resets and takes deep breaths of just they get up, they put you right back down. I love that, and so that's one thing that I always try to emulate to the fighters I teach, is to just listen. If it doesn't have, don't put emotional content in. If they get up, no big deal. Take them down again.
Greg, big fan of yours. Couldn't appreciate your time more. Thank you so much, and Godspeed in 2022.
Thank you, sir.